I don't judge you on what you want to spend your money on. If you want to buy the Lamborghini, buy the Lamborghini. I am not going to judge that. But if we're going to buy the Lamborghini, then we have to give up something somewhere else. And that is going to cause you to take more time to get to those goals that you told me you had.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and we're going to be diving into my most exciting thing to talk about and everyone's thing that they hate talking about, which is your finances, your numbers. It's called Profit with Law. That's the name of the show. So it would not be befitting if we didn't focus on your numbers and focus on your profit. So I think this is an apropos conversation to be had. Now, before your eyes glaze over and you move on to the next episode, because this is not fun to listen to or talk to, I will tell you this. In our fractional CFO side of the business, we helped a law firm owner doing $7 million in annual revenue earn as much as he earned the prior year before coming in, earn that same amount of personal income, so profit, in the first 90 days with us that he did in the prior 12 months. I'm not saying that to our horn or say, pat us on the back, say how awesome we are, because we're not. And I think that he could have done even better. But I share this with you because knowing your numbers, paying attention to your numbers, there is a power to it. And the power is that you know how to go and get clients. You know how to go and serve clients. But for the same effort that you're putting in, you could be producing a better result to you personally if you understand what to look at and you're able to define or translate that into what you should be doing as an action to make it even better. And it's pretty crazy that we can have one person A, serves the same number of clients, has the same amount of effort, has the same team size, does the same exact thing, right? We can have client A or law firm owner A, and that person has a personal income of $100,000, and we can have law firm B, same business. Everything is the same, except maybe they're making some different decisions based on certain things, and they're making, I don't know, $1 million. That is possible. And what happens is, and this is actually how I got into helping law firms in the first place, was I was a new accounting firm trying to find my way, figure out who is the target market that's going to be my niche, that's going to be where I focus my efforts. And through my affiliation with Profit First, Mike McCallowitz's book, I'm a Profit First professional since 2016, they introduced me to a law firm in Manhattan. They became my client, beautiful office in a Regis space, multiple offices on that floor that they were taking. They had 3 attorneys on staff, I think, at the time. All of them were busy. So on the surface, it looks like, oh my gosh, this person's killing it, right? But then behind the scenes, she wasn't making money. Literally moving personal funds from savings into the business to cover rent, cover payroll. And then when there's extra money, moving it back into her personal account, back into her savings, and just playing this game, this charade of making money. She introduced me to 4 of her friends. Before I knew it, I had 5 law firms as clients. 4 of the 5, same problem. 80% of my little sample set was cash poor. On the surface, to everybody else, they looked successful. They looked like booming businesses. But behind the scenes, what people weren't seeing, the dirty laundry, that was cash poor, not enough money to feed the owner. And at the end of the day, why are you building your firm? No, maybe it's not to get rich. Maybe it's actually to help everybody. But are you doing it for charity, or are you trying to live your best life in the process? And I think that's really, really important for us to think about and understand as we jump into this conversation with our guest today. Before I do that, let me just share with you this real quick. If you're interested in taking the next step in your business, you want to understand why it is that you're not be able to grow, unlock the profit that you want, move in the direction that you want to go. You've hit a plateau, or you're literally just struggling and you just can't figure out why. My team offers a 30-minute strategy session. Basically, in that 30 minutes, we will help you get clarity around where you want to go, what's getting in your way, and what it's going to take to overcome that and get there. If you want that for you, it's absolutely free. You can book it at profitwithlaw.com/strategy session, profitwithlaw.com/strategy session. Grab that while you can. We only do about 8 to 10 of those a month. So you want to grab it while you can before somebody else takes your spot. All right. Our guest today is Leah Miller. Leah is a owner of a business called Firmly Profits, and Firmly Profits is a bookkeeping and fractional CFO business. So the work that we do is the work that she does, which is awesome. I love that. It's interesting because when I work with clients, I work with law firm owners, I try to explain to them there's no such thing as competition. Competition does not exist. It is a facade. The reality is that there's always enough people for everybody to serve. There's never there. If you think of somebody as competition, you're thinking of it in a scarcity mindset, and you need to approach business with an abundance mindset. And an abundance mindset is required at every juncture of every business decision you're going to make. Because if you want to actually believe that you're going to hire an attorney and that attorney is going to get their plate filled, that has to be an abundance mindset. If you're going to invest $10,000 a month, $100,000 a month in marketing, you have to have an abundance mindset that marketing is going to pay off. If you have a scarcity mindset, you play the what if game, you never pull the trigger. You never do the things that you need to do to grow your business. So I love having people on the show who do something similar to what I do, because guess what? I'm not Leah. She's got insight that I don't have. Sure, I've got my own set of insight that she probably doesn't have. And you can go back and listen to 400 plus episodes of the podcast and get a ton of my insight. But it's this episode where you're going to get Leah's. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. And I definitely come from that abundance mindset. There are so many law firms in this country that need some sort of help, and we're here to do that.
Yeah. And the truth is like, how many can we help, right? Like if I have a CFO on my staff, they can work with maybe 10 to 20 clients. That's it, right? So like we would have to have a massive team to serve every single law firm owner in the country. And maybe we'll get there one day. But it's, one at a time, right? Like we help one at a time, kind of like our law firm listeners. You get one client at a time to grow your business, but slowly but surely you expand your staff, you have more people, you can serve more people from it. And we hope that we're creating some exponential ripple effect of growth and good in the community. We host the Law Firm Growth Summit, which you participated in as a speaker. And that whole event is based off of this abundance mindset idea, because we invite 50 plus speakers to speak on our stage, and anybody looking at it will be like, oh my gosh, that's all your competition. Like what, like why would you do that? And it's very simple. I think that the value of bringing everybody together is so exponentially greater than whatever I could provide myself, that I'd be robbing the community if I didn't provide that experience. So I almost feel like it's my duty, as in the way that we serve the legal industry, to create a place for everybody to come together and be able to share their best stuff. Leah, what we like to do with our guests is basically just ask you to give us your backstory before we start, right? The people who didn't hear about you, they don't know who you are. Tell them, how in the world did you get to doing what you do, working with law firms? You had an interesting journey that's different than mine, and probably than most. So talk to us about that.
So I started as a paralegal in a law firm. In my early 20s, I thought, like, when I was old one day in my 40s, which I'm almost there, so it's not old anymore. But back then I was like, when I'm old, I am going to be a law firm office manager. And that was the goal. And so when I was 27, our office manager left the firm I was at, and I looked at my boss, who I will be forever grateful for. And I was like, hey, I could run your law firm. And he's like, okay, let's do it. So I got a crash course in QuickBooks, and payroll. And that whole first year, I was just figuring things out. So I was at that firm for over 10 years. I went back to school and got my master's degree. And by the time I left the firm, my title was firm administrator CFO. And so my role in the firm had really grown. I was still doing paralegal work, but I was managing the whole firm. And I started doing some bookkeeping and financial consulting on the side just for fun because apparently I need lots of things to do. And I saw this whole world of law firm owners who really need some help just feeling confident in their finances. And at the same time, our office had been destroyed by a hurricane. I live in Florida a couple of years ago. And so we bought a new office, and my drive to the office was really long. I have 3 kids. I didn't want to do the drive anymore. So in May 2023, I took the leap and went full time with my business. And that's kind of where I've gotten now. And one of my strong points is I worked in a law firm. So I know how it is in a law firm. And although it's been 2 years now, I love talking to my clients about their cases and all that stuff, because that really is where my background is.
Awesome. What a way to get there. It's very interesting because, you know, you didn't start out as a bookkeeper. You didn't wake up in the morning when you were a kid and say, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to be a bookkeeper. And then, you know, through this paralegal, elevating a firm administrator, you know, kind of just set the stage for you to focus in on bookkeeping and CFO skills. So let's talk about that. What I want to do, my goal is to extract as much knowledge from you as possible in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Here's the first question that I have for you, and that is, what is your, like, when you're looking at law firms, what are you finding as the biggest mistake law firm owners are making when they enter your world? Like, where are they going wrong that you're like, this is the place that we need to start, basically with everybody who comes in the door?
I think it's as simple as they are not looking at the finances and leading their operational decisions with the financial information. So I find a lot of times law firm owners, and I get it, in the beginning of a business, you're like, whoever's going to pay me money, I'm going to do the work. That's all I care about. We need to have enough cash in the business to pay payroll next week. I get it. But at some point, as your firm grows, you need to start looking at the finances, not even just the finances in the past, but in the future. What are we budgeting for? What do we want to do? What are our long-term goals? And just looking at those every single month and using that information to make operational decisions. I think that's where the biggest mistake is, and your biggest opportunity for growth is doing that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's true, right? When somebody's starting their firm, they're like, well, F the bank account, F whether I'm making money. Like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to find clients, and I'm going to go and I'm going to serve clients. And I'm hoping that at the end of the day, it's all going to work out, right? And there's going to be money left over. And we both know that that works for the first 5 minutes, but then it gets old pretty quick because you're always chasing the next dollar, right? In his book, Profit First, Mike Michalowicz calls what business owners do in the way that they build that habit of money management when they're starting their business is bank balance accounting. You wake up in the morning, you log into your bank account, and you see what you got. And if it looks really low, you come in all frazzled and you're like, okay, I got to collect some invoices. We got to call some people. We got to send out some invoices. Oh, I haven't billed in 3 months. Maybe now is the time for me to do that. You wake up in the morning and the bank balance is big. You're coming in and you're like, okay, am I ready to buy my Lamborghini? Should I buy should we put a big office copier in here? Like, where should we spend our money? And the thing is that the bank balance that you have, it's not true. I mean, yes, it's the balance today, but it doesn't reflect your recurring expenses, your payroll that's going to come, your unpaid check, uncashed checks that are out there in the wild, waiting to hit the bank account. It also doesn't predict what's going to happen as far as new client acquisition. So yeah, it feels great this morning, but if we operate based off of that, we make really poor decisions. And I think that you're absolutely right. Now, you talk about budgeting as the key ingredient or component, I think. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's what you like. You're like, hey, well, let's create a budget and let's operate our business off of that budget. I think people hate being restricted and they hate being told what to do, even if it's being told by their own plan of what to do. Talk to me about that process of budgeting with clients and is there this type of challenge of like, hey, even if I create a budget, maybe we're not adhering to it. What's the process, not just of creating the budget, but also living by it?
Yeah, so I always start with what are your goals, and not even just, and you'll appreciate this from the profit first standpoint, not even just what are the goals for the business, like what are your personal goals? I know in my business, when I started it, I had to make a certain amount of money every month so I could leave my job. And so that's where I worked backwards. Okay, if I make this much, then I could spend this much. It's the profit first, concept. But I always start with what are your personal goals? What are the firm goals? Okay, let's put that in the budget and then work everything else in there. And then, we can set it, and a lot of times people will ask me about benchmarks for law firms. And there are obviously benchmarks of, how much you spend on marketing, how much you spend on your people. But all the firms are different. A lot of people are hybrid. They don't have an office, so their rent expense is really low. We can kind of reallocate that money somewhere else, things like that. So we just go through and see what makes sense for the firm, not what makes sense for every other firm that I work with. Like, let's talk about your goals, your firm, and we set that out. And I tell people all the time, I don't judge you on what you want to spend your money on. If you want to buy the Lamborghini, buy the Lamborghini. I am not going to judge it. But if we're going to buy the Lamborghini, then we have to give up something somewhere else. And that is going to cause you to take more time to get to those goals that you told me you had. So where are we going to give it up? We can't do them both. So what are we going to give up? And then the next step is actually looking at it every single month or more than once a month if we need to. I have clients that are in cash flow crunches. We'll speak weekly. Okay, what does cash look like this week? And it's kind of like looking at the bank account every morning, but it's with a plan. Okay, so we have this coming up. So you have to set the budget, be realistic with it. You don't want to be constricted. You want to be able to spend money. You want to spend the money on the marketing, spend the money on everything. And then looking at it and reevaluating it every month and, figuring out not even are we spending too much money? It's are we spending enough? We said we are going to spend 10% of our revenue on marketing, and we are spending 1% on marketing, because our operating costs are through the roof over here. So do we need to cut something here so we can start spending some more money? And, that's kind of how I go about budgeting it's based on the firm and the firm's goals.
Yeah, Stephen Covey is famously known to have said, begin with the end in mind. So this whole concept that you start with, hey, what are your goals? And then we work backwards from there is following along that principle, which is also interestingly how we do it as well. And it makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering for that client who's like spending 1% on marketing and is supposed to be spending 10, and they're not doing it because their operating expenses are through the roof, right? Like, what does the process look like to help them solve that, right? Like, how do we, if operating expenses are too high, that's probably committed to rent and payroll and things like that, right? So are we talking about, hey, we have to let somebody go? Are we talking about, hey, we got to give up the lease and go into a smaller space? What does that look like to be able to free up that 10% of revenue that needs to be reallocated to marketing so that we could get the goals that we want? How do you help your clients navigate that process?
So a lot of times it's increasing revenue. I work with a lot of personal injury firms. And so obviously there's huge ups and downs when it comes to personal injury firms. But a lot of times it's looking at the revenue and the operation and to figure out where the bottleneck is. Because most of the time, my clients, they're doing a good job getting new clients in. They have the inventory, they can do the billing, but their team is not working efficiently enough. There's something happening somewhere, even for hourly billing clients that bill hourly. It's let's reevaluate our billing process. Let's look at this operations process and try to increase that revenue. I try not to say, hey, we need to fire, half our staff. I get it. People, you don't want to do that to people. But sometimes there's hard conversations to be had of your team it's not even the money we're spending on the team, but this team is not working for you operationally. They are not driving the revenue. You are getting them the leads, you are getting them the work. There's plenty of work for them, but they're not driving the revenue. They're not doing what they need to do to make us successful. And so we need to have hard conversations. Obviously, when we're shopping around for rent and things like that, if we need to cut back on some operations costs, then we do that. But a lot of times for law firms, I find it's not so much the expenses that are the issue. It's the revenue, the billing, the operations to get that revenue happening and the cases closed.
Okay, so I get it. We can solve a lot by getting the revenue increased, and instead of increasing our operating expenses, we now take the extra money in the door and earmark that to marketing. But how do you get the revenue to increase? I mean, you even said, hey, I work with PI firms. We both know that if I bring in a client today, that's not changing my revenue until 9 to 12 to 18 months from now, right? So it's almost like which came first, the chicken or the egg, because if I don't invest in the marketing, I'm not going to increase the number of clients I acquire. And if I don't increase the number of clients that I acquire, I can't solve this by increasing the revenue. So what's I know that that works, but I also know that has its challenges. So what do you do in the interim? Like, what's the stopgap or what's the temporary measure to kind of like, what I think it's like, kind of like, those puzzles where it's a square and there's a bunch of tiles and there's one tile that's missing and you have to move the tiles around to finish the picture, but you can't it's very hard to get it started. You need to move a lot of pieces just to get it started. And then once you do, everything else can kind of start to fall into place. Is the thing that's going to move it actually the increase of revenue, or is there something before that allows us to make that happen?
I think a lot of times, so a couple different parts to that. A lot of times I find it's not even bringing in more cases that they need. There's a backlog of cases in a lot of firms. I've had several firms I worked with where they have a backlog and there's something in the pipe, like something along the way that's holding things up. So we can clean up some of that backlog to kind of help us with the cash. When it comes to increasing the marketing, if somebody is spending 1%, they need to get to 10%. I'm not going to say go out and spend $20,000 next month on marketing when we've only been spending $500. Obviously, there has to be a step up to that. And then in the interim, the attorneys have to get out there and do, the networking, getting on LinkedIn. Obviously, a lot of people are on there. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. And so finding different ways to get those clients in before you have the cash to spend on, the Google ads and all of that kind of stuff. So getting out of your comfort zone, getting creative in what you can do. I just wrote a LinkedIn post about this recently. I've been having some conversations about how sometimes we have associate attorneys on staff so that we can free up the time for the, owner or managing partner to go out and get some of those referral sources. Because a lot of times, especially in PI, the bigger cases come from referral sources. So how do we free up our time to get out there and do that? So I think it's like you said, moving all the puzzle pieces at once. You can't throw all the money at the Google ads and get all the cases in and then the revenue increases. So it's what can we do with the cases we already have in the office, whether it's let's encourage our paralegals to bill a little bit more if we're billing hourly. Let's encourage, moving these cases through a little bit quicker if we need to. And then at the same time, incrementally increasing that marketing spend.
Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that, because to me, when you said increased revenue, I immediately went to new client acquisition. You're absolutely correct. Like, there are other ways to get dollars in the door, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, hey, we're going to go and we're going to hit our accounts receivable and try to collect some money. We're going to go and do some billing to get some bills out. We're going to, if it's a PI firm, we're going to see if we can push our staff to do more, to get more files into the negotiating stage, or go and follow up with negotiations that have been dragging on and move it along. Maybe file suit on some where we think that that's what's going to be required to get the insurance company to the table with the right offer. Your attorney's got 100 open files on their desk. There's a good chance that something's going to languish or fall through the cracks. And it's just like, hey, let's just refocus and let's lean in and try to figure out how do we get more cash dollars in the door this month. And then we do the same thing next month. And in the meantime, what we're doing is we're now allocating those extra dollars to investing in our marketing and starting to move that needle. And you made another really good point, which is, hey, we're not going to go from 500 to 20,000 overnight. As a matter of fact, most law firms are not set up like you don't have a full-time marketer on your staff, right? So where's the first place that you would spend your dollars? And we recently had a fractional CMO on our podcast, Margarita Eberlein, and I don't know the episode number off the top of my head. I'll look it up at some point when you're talking, and I'll come back with it. But my team will link it up in the show notes. Go listen to that episode. And she's not the only one out there, but a fractional CMO is actually something that I would invest in before I started investing in Google Ads, before I started investing in any sort of major expenditure, because you want somebody helping you design your marketing plan based on your resources available to you and your market. And take an expert under your wing and have them do it, because they're going to guide you through a lot of, it's almost, I'm going to go back to these puzzles and games and whatever, right? Like, you remember we used to do when we were kids, we used to do these, it was like, a certain, like you had to like follow the path and get to the finish line, but there was like branches. And if you took the wrong branch, you might end up in a dead end, and it might go like halfway through on the harder ones. It might go halfway through and you think, oh, I'm on it, I'm good. Right. And you end up at a dead end. You got to backtrack all the way back. That's what happens in our business, right? Like, if we take a wrong path, we might not realize until we're 6-9 months in that we're on the wrong path. And you can save yourself a lot of pain and a lot of lost revenue and expenses out the door by just having an expert at your side making these decisions alongside with you. Similar to, hey, you should have a fractional CFO in your business to help you make good financial decisions, understand your numbers and understand what they mean, and be able to focus on the right areas in order to get to the goal that you want to get to. Grab a fractional CMO and put them into your business as well. So
I think a lot of it is being intentional. So that's kind of what you're saying, is like, be intentional with what you're doing every month, looking for the extra revenue, coming up with the marketing plan, all of that. And that's what I say all the time, is we need to be intentional in the decisions that we're making if you want that sustained growth that's going to last a long time.
So Leah, if somebody creates their budget, right? They're now in it, right? They're doing the right things. They're focused on cutting the expenses where they need to, increase the revenue where they need to. They've got the right direction that they're going. What is the key reports or numbers that you're encouraging your clients to look at every single month to be able to understand how their business is doing and whether they're on the right path to get the results that they want?
So a lot of what I do is kind of separate things into those 3 categories, which I kind of already mentioned, is your revenue driving expenses, which is your marketing. So how much are we spending on that? Your wage expense, how much are we paying our people? If you're spending 60% of your revenue on your people, you have an operations issue and a people issue. And then also the last one is just the operations expenses. So I kind of look at those 3 numbers every single month. And not even that you need a certain, on a budget, I set like those percentages of how much we want to spend on each of those. But if you look at it month to month to just see what the patterns are, to see if anything's, out of whack, if we need to kind of change things. And so that's what I encourage, is look at your revenue. One, know how much money you're bringing in, know how much you're paying your people and how much you're spending on marketing, and then how much your profit is at the end. And make sure you look at that profit number. And so a lot of people are looking at top line, and you want to know, how much profit you actually are bringing in and what changes do we have to make with that. So it's just looking at, it as a whole, but you really could, look at it very basic. Revenue, how much am I spending on marketing? How much am I spending on my people? What's my profit? And see what that looks like month to month and kind of start there to make some changes.
What is a good percentage for profit?
Profit, I mean, my clients and I are shooting for 20-25%. A lot of times, it starts, I have one client, we started at 5% 2 years ago, and we're at 20% this year. And so that's kind of what a lot of what we're shooting it for is that 20-25%. I've got clients doing 30% profit. There's definitely different ways. A lot of people are hybrid now. They're not spending money on rent. There's different options for offshore people to work for you that do really well. There's different ways to save money. And so, yeah, I have some clients that are, a lot higher and a lot lower, and we're working towards getting it to that 20-25% is an ideal situation for sure.
Yeah. So, and I aim higher than you. We try to get to 30 to 40% profit, and you have a client that's doing 30, so it's possible. What's interesting is that when I throw that number out, if I'm on like a webinar or something like that, I always have somebody in the chat who's like, "Oh, if you could get 30% margin, sign me up," right? But then that person is not signing up, right? Like they're not actually becoming a client. There's a lot of people out there who don't believe it's possible because they haven't seen it, right? But folks, you've got two financial professionals working with law firms sitting here on a podcast having a conversation, and we're in the range of 25 to 40%. That's our range between the two of us. So look at, and I just want to be clear how I'm defining profit, and I'm not sure how you are, but I'm defining profit total owner compensation, right? So it's not just the net income on your profit and loss statement. If you're an S corp and you're on payroll and you have wages you're paying yourself, it's coming off as an expense. It's a misleading number, right? So if you paid yourself 100,000 and you made 200,000, you actually have a profit of 300,000 in my interpretation,
Yes.
right? So total owner's compensation divided by revenue is your profit margin. So profit plus your salary, and any other, like if you bought yourself a car for tax purposes, but you bought yourself a car, add that in there too. So if that number divided by your revenue is 25% to 40%, you're doing okay. If it's less than that, you could be doing better. And that is the value somebody like Leah brings to the table, is being able to help you move from, say it's 15% to 25%. Now let's just keep it simple. If you're doing $1 million, and she helps you unlock 10% more in owner compensation, that's 10% of $1 million. That's $100,000, right? So we're talking about real money here, and that's just $1 million firm. Like fractional CFO, I'm sure that she's not working with anybody who's under 2, and we are as well. Like like you have to be willing to, you have to have the ability to invest in a fractional CFO. So and typically that is based on the size of your business. But if you're doing 5 million, that 10% is $500,000. That's $500,000 more. Like what could you do with $500,000? I mean, that could be your yacht. That could be your retirement account. It could be your kid's college, right? Like there's a lot of things that $500,000 can do. And that's 1 year of 10% more in profit. So that's the power of using somebody like Leah in your business. Leah, we unfortunately are out of time. We could be talking about this stuff all day, but really, really cool insights. So 2 things as we close out this episode. Number 1, what is one parting piece of advice or wisdom you want to leave with our listeners? Number 2, if somebody really enjoyed hearing the way that you laid this out, they want to understand how they can work with you, what is the next step that they can do to explore an opportunity of getting to know you or working with you?
So parting wisdom is going back to just looking at the finances monthly. And it sounds crazy, but if you just are paying attention to them, you don't even have to make any huge changes. Just look at them every single month. You will see changes in your firm. I promise. And contacting me, my website is firmlyprofits.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I post almost every single day, different tips, tricks, things like that. I love chatting with people on LinkedIn. And so if you go to my website, you can schedule a consult call and we can go over just different things that you're doing and what your needs are.
Awesome. Folks, we're going to link all that up in the show notes to this episode, which you can find in your podcast player or on the YouTube channel that you're watching, as well as on our website, profitwithlaw.com. So go check it out. If you're driving out for a run, you don't have to stop and write this down or try to remember it. Just go to our website and grab it at your leisure. And of course, if you want to have a clarifying call with our team to understand where you should be focusing on for the next 12 months, how to get out of your own way, what are the things that are going to get you through and to your next goal or next stage of business growth, you want to book a strategy session with us. It's absolutely free. You can go to profitwithlaw.com/strategy session. We are here every single week with a brand new episode. Usually it's brand new, but every single week we're releasing a new episode on Thursday mornings. So stay tuned, hit the subscribe button on your YouTube channel, on your podcast player, so that you get notified when a new episode is dropped. We'll see you next week. Take care.